So, I read Conscience of a Conservative by Barry Goldwater and Conscience of a Liberal by Paul Krugman. I've already done a review of Conscience of a Conservative. I'll leave that in the description below. It's the video or audio file before this one, depending on which platform you're listening or watching this on. Now, Conscience of a Liberal. See, I consider myself center-right. I don't even know if I really consider myself a conservative much, depending on the definition. In the original Barry Goldwater definition, yes, I guess I would consider myself that. Now, Paul Krugman's book was marketed as kind of a response to this, as a response to Conscience of a Conservative. It's called Conscience of a Liberal. So I read this book because it was a response. I wanted to read both sides. And I assumed I would like both of them. And I hate to sound like a partisan here. I am mad at Paul Krugman for making me sound like a partisan, to praise one and condemn the other. This book was awful. Like, there are very few books. I have read all kinds of things that I both agree and disagree with. There are plenty of things that I really disagreed with, but I would recommend because they're important. Books by Noam Chomsky. I read Government in the Future. That I disagree with it greatly, but it was really interesting to really figure out what the other side believes in, what the far leftists actually believe in. That was an important book. This book, no. And my big issue is not that I disagree with the principles of liberalism or the conscience of a liberal. It's because, one, I listen to Contra Krugman. It's a great podcast. I recommend you listen to it. They just go through, Tom Woods and Bob Murphy just go through Paul Krugman's columns and say why he's wrong. And it's not even that they debunk what he says, it's that they reference times where he has debunked himself and said the exact opposite, so I know that I can't trust him. And he did put in a lot of sources, and I have praised books in the past for sourcing, or for putting in a ton of sources, which is great to show they're actually providing facts. However, he would reference something that the right wing did. And then instead of quoting the article where they did the thing, he would quote a left-wing interpretation, or he would source the left-wing interpretation of the original article. So it's like, why not just source the original source? I don't understand that if you're not biased in that manner. Now, my biggest problem with this book, again, it's not the fact that I disagree with the principles. It's the fact that there were no principles. There was no conscience. There was nothing. This book, it looks like Paul Krugman just ranted about Republicans and how racist they were. It was just a rant. But instead of talking about principles, instead of talking about Barry Goldwater's book, they just slapped the title on it, thinking, oh, this will get the book to sell. What if we call it this? The title is incredibly misleading. That is my biggest problem with it, is the fact that the title tells you nothing about the book. It is so misleading. Again, this is a book that I would not recommend reading just because it's not what it claims to be. It's not informative. I didn't learn anything because the title is so misleading. It's not what it's about. It was marketed as a response. Again, the title is self-evident, marketed as a response to Conscience of a Conservative. He mentions Conscience of a Conservative by title twice. He represents Barry Goldwater once, 3 paragraphs in a 300-page book. So it didn't teach me anything. And he doesn't talk about principles. He talks about how he basically spends the first 3/4 of the book just talking about why income inequality, or how to stop income inequality, and the fact that income inequality is a thing that should be stopped. He doesn't actually say why it should be stopped, why that's a good thing, why income inequality is bad. He just assumes it is and talks about how to stop it. That is not a book of principles. That is a book of pragmatism. He has not explained to me why I should side with that. And I am part of the liberalist movement. I like the liberalists. I would consider myself a liberalist. They follow liberalism. This book does not follow liberalism. It talks about progressivism, which is very different from liberalism. It is awful. Again, it's not that I disagree with liberalism. It's that this book is not, of all the people to write a book about liberalism, Paul Krugman should not be doing this. So that's it. I've already went way over time because there's so many bad things to say about this book. Just, don't read it. Honestly, read up on liberalism. I encourage you to read up on liberalism, but this book is not one of those books. But like the video if you enjoyed, subscribe for more, and thanks for watching.